Well, I was wondering actually, so we're on to double figures now of teacher reports that we've created through the new process. So Tom set me up so that I can compare all the different models when I'm generating the what went wells. I think they're a little bit out of date though. I don't think we've got the newest for any of them in there. I think it's running from
what, sorry, the model.
Yes. Yeah, so the one that if in case this is interesting, O3 is the best by far.
Huh. At the selection or the writing?
The actual writing. So all of them are given the same information, which is both a good and a bad thing, because sometimes if you aren't happy with the particular evidence that it's chosen and you regenerate, or you aren't happy with what it's chosen to focus on, none of them are that good at choosing something alternative to talk about, which I think is more of a prompt thing than a model thing. But O3 consistently formats it in a way that it gives you the bullet points, it gives a little intro. I have to shorten it a lot of the time to fit it on the page, literally. But it's the only one that, even when you've got quite a weak class with lots of errors that need picking up on, it's the only one that is relentlessly positive. Even though the prompt quite clearly says you only focus on the positives here, the other three that I've been testing all will let sneaky, even better ifs creep into their what went well.
We could always add another module which just does formatting once all the signals through. Like if O3 is being a bit too long, like you're doing the manual at the minute, but you're capturing all those presumably, so we can use all those as examples of how you might want to shorten it and do a little shortening module, a kind of condenser module.
Yeah.
For the output, that would be cool. And actually, testing the models is really sensible. I really like that, particularly on the bits where, like we are on this at the moment, where we're kind of pre-scale. So before we did, do you remember the stuff that Jake was doing on the transcriptions? And when we tested all the models, and he did the full set of evals and did them against each other with the top trans. Do you remember?
I do.
I thought that was brilliant. But yeah, doing that on the new chunks. So when we're moving into new areas of the curriculum, and doing even testing weaker models just to see if there's something a bit more clear, or weaker in inverted commas, like clear about the output or something. Do you know what I mean? We should definitely be doing quite a lot of that, and then trying to refine it down to a point where we're happy if it's a new type of procedure, so that we can scale it afterwards. How are you doing it at the minute? Well, what else have you noticed?
So I have it set up. There's a separate what went well and even better if flow at the moment. And it goes through its own separate process that takes a lot of information, and it's already from the previous step been told these are the areas that highest priority for this group to improve. And it's already in the previous step identified the intervention groups off the back of that. So this part is taking all of that information around, these are the areas of improvement for this class, or these are the things they've done well. Here's all the examples, so it gets a massive list of data. It also gets model comments to draw on. So where Cassie's done all of the sample, here's what you would say if commas after a frontal adverbial are a problem. It's got all of that as well. And then there's 4 models set up. One of them is
piece of work, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a chunky document. So there's 4 of them set up. The automatic one is Claude something. I can't remember which one. Look.
I think it's 3.5 on it.
Is it really?
I think that's right, yeah.
I don't think that's
the reason for that, I'll say.
You know, I'm going to
say because there is a reason why that was there to begin with. But carry on now.
So the other ones we've got to test against are 3.7, 03, 5 is new actually, as in it's new.
I just put that in literally a few minutes ago.
Oh, okay. I don't need to worry that I haven't tested that one then. 4A and 4.1. So there's one that's generated automatically. If I like that one, I can just use it. But most of the time, well, my process now is I just automatically go and get it to generate on A3 as well. And then if that's not good, currently do a bit of testing on the others to see if what I initially thought was still the case. usually what happens is there's not that much between the others. The format is a lot more consistent across the others. So O3 always lays it out with an introduction and then numbered or bullet pointed lists with a little subheading and explanation for each one.
It was always really good at instruction following. I really miss it as a model, I must admit. Got lots to say about GPT-5. I don't understand how it even works as an API, because it's doing like you can't get anything consistent from it, almost inherently, because of the way that it's got its selector as part of the model. Sorry, I'll cut you off again.
That's from GP. Say that again. Explain that again.
So basically, the GPT-5, right? What they did was, did you watch? I can't remember. Did we watch it together? There was like, it's one of those Wednesdays where they released it after work. It's like after work our time, 6 p.m. our time, and it was such a weird release for me. Like, I follow this guy, Benedict Evans, who's like former Andreessen Horowitz, and he's a really good analyst. I think he's great. He likened it to, he was like, basically this is all about the model, the model selector, which is, and you know, it's not a hot take. People were really negative about the fact that you went in to the drop down and you could select all these different models, because for most people that was really esoteric and not very usable, and it was quite, you know, it was mystifying what they were all, and unless you were somebody who was a power user and using them all the time and so knew the difference and was happy to be trying, you know, the same prompts in different places and so on, where you had this family of models that you loved for different things. And I was one of those people. You know, I used to use 4.5 for editing, amazing editor. Actually, not, I didn't think that brilliant at writing, but amazing at editing. Really, really big model, biggest model they had until that point. Whereas like O3 for, particularly when it had search, you know, for all the analytics and so on. But people loved 4.0. Classic 4.0, right? And it had this kind of character that they all really liked, and it's the one that's got in trouble for giving people, you know, for deepening their psychoses and so on, right? Have you heard about this? There's loads of stuff written about that. But by the same measure, people were using it, you know, quite innocuously as a therapist, and when it was taken away, they were very upset about it. But from a product point of view, it makes a whole load of sense, because you take all of this nonsense and you collapse it into one thing called GPT-5. And this is why it was seen as such a poor release by some people, because there was such expectation of this new, you know, flagship model. And in a way, what it became was an automatic model picker. So the whole picker got collapsed into one model, and it decided which model to use based on your query. So you can force it into thinking, which is basically O3, but another generation, right? I don't know what the base model is, but I know that I'm not sure anyone does. It's still a mixture of experts. It's still big, but not as big as 4.5, as I understand it. You know, this sort of thing. But it's good for the analysis, the thinking one. Whereas the other one will pick depending on your query. So it'll use mini, and you know, barely cost anything for them if you're asking what the capital of X country is, right? But we'll switch. But because of that, and it doesn't seem like from the notes anyway, the documentation, that when you're using it in the API, it does anything different really. So you can force thinking, and you can do thinking modes, and so there's various variables which I think are really important for, you know, what if we end up using it, and we're not there yet. It's too new. There's too many variables in a way. But the core model, right, is still doing some picking for you, which feels wild. I mean, I know you can pin it down. But anyway, and it's interesting. It strikes me the whole release, that thing I was saying, the live stream was bungled. You know, there was all these mistakes. There was that heinous graph error. Did you must have seen this, Tom, where it had two different labels in the same size bar. It's like, what are you doing? The world is watching. It was bizarre, wasn't it? But the thing about GPT-5 in response to those other models is that, you know, when it has its moments, when it's the right model, like it's amazing. It really is. It's super powerful. But you don't always get that, in my experience.
I think there's something to be said about there's thinking, you know, how much thinking they're doing, and there's like rule following, and often the models that think more, I don't know, often the models that think more are better when you give fewer instructions, as in they fill in the gaps better than a model that doesn't think as much. So with the stuff that we're focusing on with transcription, we want very little thinking in most cases. Some cases we do, but most cases we don't. So the best model that we've found for that happens to also be one of the smallest with Gemini 2.5 Flash. And it's similar with marking. We've done so much work fixing the scope of marking, making it really narrow and saying, in this case, you do this, and these are examples, these are counter examples, that really we don't want the model to go and think about it. We want it to do what we tell it to do because we've done the thinking already. With comment generation, I wonder whether it's always going to be better with thinking models, and thinking models or models with more that we give it more thinking credits will always be better because we want a kind of open-ended thing. Or maybe we've just not got to the point and iterated on comments where we're like, no, this is how we want comments, and now follow these rules, and it will come back again to a model that doesn't think as much and is better at following rules as well.
Well, I mean, that in a way is my concern. Is that so? My experience of the thinking models, particularly big ones, like so Opus, for example. So one of the big GIST models, Opus for thinking, uses a lot of time, huge model, and you know, in my experience, fits really well to its context window. Whereas I feel like some of the other ones don't so well, although Google's always been very good at that, Gemini has. But the writing output is really hit and miss. And it's about the fact that it loses maybe it loses a thread of the core task in its thinking and overthinks on a particular bit. And that it's almost like the different, you know, it takes the signal that you've given in the prompt or the input, and then through the thinking pathway magnifies some parts of it more than others. So it's unweighted, and when it comes out in the writing, it's unpredictable. Whereas obviously for thinking tasks, for analytical tasks, you need that to happen. And actually there's something about the inherent kind of quantitative nature of the task that makes it closer and more consistent, closer to the actual output that you want, because it's thought through all the areas and kind of pushed to the edge of the shape, the imaginary shape that you're asking for, if you know what I mean. Whereas with writing, it's not like that. There's so much feel in it. And, you know, O3 was pretty good. They had a really good sweet spot, I thought. So it sounds like you're experiencing exactly that. But my worry is that with GPT-5, you know, apart from if you get exactly the right parameters like Tom was talking about, I'm not sure we're going to get the same thing.
It'd be interesting to see your comparison between those two, Anna, because so with this comment generation kind of test bed that we've got, you've not used GPT-5 in it yet. It would be interesting to see your comparison between O3 and 5. I imagine 5 will be more like 4.0 and Sonnet than O3.
The other thing that's at the forefront of my mind using these is I want the comments to sound familiar. So I don't want it to feel when you get another class report back when you've had one, say a month ago, that it's like it's been written by someone completely different. There's been a nice, it took me a while to get the hang of this, where O3 was very consistent in the way that it was presenting, laying things out, the language it was using, apart from randomly starting something with colleagues the other day. And then usually it's really reliable. And I've had to really stop myself from going and trying to make it sound like me.
You can imagine the kids reading that.
Yeah, I mean, this is for teachers. So
yeah. Oh, this was the class report.
Yeah, this is the class report. But I have to stop myself from going and editing it to write it how I would write it and phrase things how I would phrase them, and think, well, actually, this isn't me. This is it. This needs to be characteristic of the process and not of how I would say things. So that consistency and reliability in how it generates the comments is also really important, because if it starts sounding different, I'm going to have to fix it to make it sound like itself, and then we're getting into a whole weird thing.
It's going to be so much more important in Key Stage 4 as well, isn't it? This bit that we're doing now, because the Key Stage 2 ones You know, that original tranche of reports, that there's not as much scope for personality, for want of a better word. It's because it's quite locked down to the things that have been prioritized for it, and using the specific examples and quotes from the text, sentence by sentence, delivered, right? Obviously, in that case, given that it's also got a word, not exactly, but you know what I mean. We've got the space that it's filling in that module. Actually, there's little left to play with in terms of who's talking, whereas in the ones we're doing now, it's not like that at all, is it? Yeah.
I think most models definitely have a bit of consistency at their base of how they respond, the tone of writing that they have when they respond. I think where we run into, when it becomes more difficult, is when we don't want that default, either because the model we're using is the best model but doesn't have the best tone, but we want to use it because it's writing the right stuff just in the wrong way, whereas another model that says it in the right way, writes it in the right way, but isn't the right stuff. It's an easier problem to fix, the tone problem, than the content problem, if that makes sense. I think the way that this probably gets fixed is similar to how we fixed other issues. It's like examples and counterexamples, adding those to the way that we're prompting in our strategy. It's how we've improved transcription through that, by giving examples of this is how you transcribe this piece of work. We've improved marking by that, by being really specific about what's correct and incorrect in particular circumstances. And I think tone is another example.
Yeah, I mean, yes. So you know how it's a bit like the one I was talking about a minute ago, the kind of constriction, the shortening module. And with that in mind, the way we did the transcriptions, so you've got the symbolic, adjusted, symbolic, so on, right? Actually, if you had output for the older, more advanced learners who want a bit more nuance in the comment, but we still need the specificity, and to avoid any chance of empty insight and all of our other, what are they? Red flags? No, things on our hit list. You could do a version which is just the points to make and how. So it would read really robotically, but is exactly what needs to be included, and then do the personalization step that makes it more of a narrative. They can and then you can. I was worrying about the kind of not cross pollination. What's the opposite? Pollution of the signal in the prompt if it was a single step, right? And if you're just doing tone for on its own, that could be really quite powerful actually. Yeah, go on.
It's almost exactly like what you shared this morning, Anna. So you shared that marketing copy, and there was two parts to it. The first one was like points to hit, and the second part was marketing copy. It's the same thing, isn't it? It's like this is bullet, kind of as much information as possible in as few words as possible, and then this is the actual.
That's what you always do. That is yet another instance of us mapping expert practice. Do you know what I mean? Only this time it's not marking, it's comms.